So it was really a wonderful story, obviously finding out that it's true. And I just felt that it was really powerful. And then when I set out to find all the actors, and we got wonderful actors from both New York and LA that agreed to do this. We hardly paid them anything, and did all the recording and the editing and everything like that. They were, a lot of them were Jewish, and a lot of them actually, their families was from Kiev, Russia. And they were thrilled to be part of this. They just brought their own, heritage and their own, spice and deliciousness and their families and grandparents, into their character. And it was really wonderful to see that come to fruition. So, I did it because I loved it, and I did it because, the play was really good. And I don't know if you all know, but Dr. Eisner died, very recently. Actually, when we set this live stream to happen, he knew of it, and I think maybe 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago is when he passed. And he was very happy that he was able to, again, show it. After the play, one of the things he did is he wrote letters, and he wrote letters to every synagogue, every Jewish theater company in the country. I don't even know how many, handwritten notes, and some of them were emailed, and asking them to show this. That was his only intention. That was his only desire, for as many people as possible to see this. And obviously trying to get it to the next step. He would have liked to see this on stage with real actors, so we can sit like in the audience and actually experience it as theater goers, right? Because that experience is so different than us sitting in front of our computers. And he would have liked to see it go further than that. And so it's wonderful that the more people see it, the more people can talk about it, the more people can talk about the story, because obviously it has a huge significance. So that's all I'm going to say. I'll let everyone else speak.
So I had read about the Mendel Beiliss trial several times in the times that I've taught and studied Jewish history. And it always seemed to me an odd thing, because I also never expected a Jew to get anything, in Russia at the time, to get anything that even would appear to have been a fair trial. And it turns out, of course, that he got away. He was freed, but they still blamed the Jewish community. And there were still pogroms, and there were still, problems. And of course, and I liked at the end where they said, well, we'll have a better system. There are still plenty of problems in Russia, and someday we'll have a better government. There will be freedom. And I was thinking, it's because in many ways the communist Russia was worse than Tsarist Russia was for so long. But I thought it was very, very well done. Did you come across any people who have compared it to The Fixer? Because just yesterday, I read an article about Bernard Malamud's The Fixer in Taggart, and how it was shameful of what Malamud did. And I never knew the backstory.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% on, I don't know if I'm 100% accurate, but the understanding that I have is that he took the story. Well, when Beiliss came to the United States, after he was free, he took his whole family and came to the United States. He wrote his own autobiography. And actually that's on Amazon. So anyone who would like to read that, they can. He took the book, he took that story and made it into a film, I think in the 1960s. But Beiliss and his family and a lot of other people were not very happy with him because I think he kind of like stole the material without really.
He did. He stole it without attribution, and he changed the characters so that Beiliss himself. Well, he didn't call him Beiliss. His name was Yaakov Bach, I think, and he made him kind of a scoundrel, but caught in the accused of this blood libel, and he made his wife look like a prostitute, or at least a woman of very low character. And so Beiliss's family was very upset, and now his grandson is trying to pursue something. But of course, Malamud has been dead for years and years. So
yeah, correct. I did speak to his grandson actually. And he has written a small little pamphlet also that's also on Amazon, and he's definitely very passionate about his grandfather, and I know he lectures the country, tell story. But yeah, I mean, Dr. Eisner, read a number of books, and he kind of took what he felt were the facts, because there was one book that he sent me that were actual transcripts or like the police reports when they were interviewing some of the witnesses that are actually in the library in Moscow at the Jewish library. So there was a book that had really good, accurate and factual events that happen, and I think he read all of that and then it was able to kind of condense it to the story that he wrote. Yeah.
Anyhow, it was excellent work. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I agree. It was excellent. So I as this was going on, I was thinking of the Malamud book, which I'd read it some time ago. I don't remember exactly, but so my recollection is that the Malibu book ended on a very bleak ending. I'm not sure he got out of jail. So I'm wondering if in Malibu's defense, one could argue that he wrote a fiction story motivated by this, but he was not he didn't name Beiliss, and he was not claiming it was a factual account of the trial. So
that's true, right. but he stole huge sections. That's a problem.
I'm not going to defend that.
That's true.
Other questions, comments, thoughts? Please share.
I have a question, if I may, Joni. We may not know all the answers because I guess the writer would know more about, how his research, but based on what you were saying about the transcripts of the witness statements, I wonder, are there also, if you know, transcripts of the actual trial? Of course, in present day, we would have court reporters and sometimes, recording devices. But of course, they didn't have it back then. So I just was wondering if there are any kind of specific transcripts of what people did say at the trial. And I have also one more unrelated question, but what do you think that the world opinion of this whole trial and all the news reporting, did that have a bigger influence on making sure that there was a fair trial in the eyes of the world? So those are my questions. Thank you.
That's really good questions. I don't know if there was a actual transcripts of the trial. I since I know that they are at the Jewish Library in Moscow, I'm sure if one will go there, they'll be able to look at what's there. The only thing that I was able to see in that book was transcripts of like the detectives who did the research and some of the witnesses. In regards to your second question, I'm sorry, remind me your second question.
Oh, okay, thank you. There
Yes,
was
yes.
so much newspaper reporting and
Yes, there was. And that was the fascinating thing. And I know that he had spoken to me about that he wanted to make sure he framed that story in, in the context of the entire world, because it really was written in the New York Times and, the London and the Le Figaro in France. So, the thing about it was that the world is watching. And I think we've said that so many times in the play, and it has a lot of implications. I mean, I'm sure you, Joni, and can talk about this too, but it's also how the world is perceiving this very special trial that's happening on this unknown Jew, but like the whole Jewish religion is on the stand at that time, and I always thought that maybe trials like that and stories like that maybe started building all the hatred that existed in World War II. It's like you can slowly start seeing that increase, sort of like the groundwork of what is to come. So I think the world is watching is a very important, and that's why I wanted to put a paper boy there with the newspapers to really kind of give us the feeling that, this is not a small little story in a town. A lot of people believe things like this.
even today, I see the same kind of thing happening in the world in the news, but I'm not sure we've learned a lot there. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. The newspaper boy, I thought that was a good way to convey that, it was all over the world and it was in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great questions.
I was just going to jump in here for a second. What it made me think of, so my son's a history major, and he did this really interesting paper looking at the reporting on the Dreyfus affair. So it made me think about how the thread of the and then I don't know how many of you watched the most recent Ken Burns special, but it just made me think about how, despite the fact that there is reporting about these very punctuated critical events that the world comes out very strongly against, directed towards the Jews, like it doesn't seem to undo the kind of global thought around Jews and who we are in the world and our role. I mean, look at the current stuff with Kanye, right? And Kyrie Irving. So it's just so interesting because the undercurrent of Ken Burns's documentary, and if you read the documents around the Dreyfus affair and then this stuff, it's well reported. It's out there. The New York Times was writing about all this stuff, but still it doesn't seem to change perceptions or the events, right? Except in this case, which is a pretty interesting thing to think about, right?
It's very interesting. This is the second panel that I've been on today. Earlier, there was a movie as part of the film festival, part of the film festival here in Greenbelt, called The Wandering Jew, and it was after two shorts about the Ukraine crisis, and it was a French film. It was kind of meandering, but it brought in a lot of things. It was tracing the roots of the legend of the Wandering Jew, and it was, anyhow, it was this idea, and the ideas behind anti-Semitism are age old, and there's always this huge element of lack of reason and lack of fairness, because that's just part of the whole thing about anti-Semitism. It's not based on reason or science or history or anything. It's just hatred, and
Right.
And especially this story, this legend of the Wandering Jew, is something that is an illustration of feelings that still exist throughout the world, and even here in our country, more so now than ever, or more so now than in many years. I can't say that ever, and it's pretty shocking, but it's this. You would find these days people who don't think very differently than some of the people who brought these charges against Mendel Beiliss.
Right.
Anyone else? Please jump in.
And I mean, I just kind of want to, I'm not Jewish. Actually, I was born Greek Orthodox, and I've been a Buddhist for the last 35 years. But when I looked at the story and when I saw the characters and actually saw the words of some of these characters that were, witnesses, I just loved them. They just were so real and so pathological in a mysterious way, that when you really listen to the words that Dr. Eisner wrote, it kind of felt like they all wanted to speak the truth. They all wanted to speak the truth, and yet they were kind of suppressed, I guess, by what was going on, by politics, by their culture, by whatever it was. But I just love, and I think the actors who were in it did such a great job in conveying some of these, characters. They were just really lovely.
Well, I always look at the end and then what happened next. I was curious as to what kind of repercussions the defense attorneys faced. I know the one was told to retire, but the other one that did pursue the case and won, I wondered what happened to him.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there was no evidence that kind of spoke of that. And I personally haven't read the autobiography of Beiliss himself. I am planning on getting it and reading it just to see if there's more in it that, we don't know about. But yeah, I don't know. And I'm not sure if this is true, but I did hear from somewhere that there were total 5 attorneys, that were representing him, and they would leave, and they were representing him and they would leave. So I'm not sure of that.
So were the details of the trial, were those based on Beiliss's account? Since there weren't transcripts, I think we said, presumably. So
Yeah, they were. No, not just him. There were a lot of books. There were 2 or 3 books total that I know Dr. Eisner read as part of his research, and I'm sure many articles and everything that was out there.
So there were eyewitnesses.
They were written by a third person.
So there were other reporters then that were watching this. So that's why we have such good information.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. To think about, there was no email or phones in 1913. So if London and New York was writing about it, then there were reporters there, from those countries actually, listening and reporting. So yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
So in response to Joni's comment with that, we have these individual cases where it was proven that the charges were trumped up. Those are still individuals. These prejudices have been baked in for many years, for a very, very long time. So a couple individual cases weren't going to do much as far as swaying general public opinion, I think. Unfortunately.
Right, right. But, you know, me personally, I personally, my belief is if you can change one person's heart, we've done something, you know? And that's like when I do my projects or I do plays, and I've done quite a few plays. I always think that if the audience leaves the dark theater and then goes home and thinks about what they saw and talks to their family about what they saw, you know, I as an artist, and I also do documentaries, so a documentarian, believe that I've done my job, you know, because you walk out of some place and you say, okay, where are we gonna go eat? This is not, you know, this is the kind of play you want to have a discussion about afterwards. And you know, it's just putting those seeds. That's one of the things that each individual person can do. It's my own personal belief.
I certainly hope that it evolves so that it will get a stage production at some point.
Yes, well, Dr. Eisner, before he passed, he sent so many letters, and you know, he's very accomplished writer. I mean, he wrote over 15, 18 books, I think, and also was working on a couple while he was ill. So he's a very accomplished writer, and definitely put his time, effort, and love. And he's survived by his wife, June Linowitz, and also his daughter, Susan and Orrin Eisner. And I think they did watch the screening tonight, and they were very happy and felt that, you know, he's looking down on us from up above and smiling that we actually can, you know, show his work and people can talk about it.
I'm glad you two were able to join us.
Yeah, no, this is great. I wonder if, you know, the J by J here in DC, which is the Jewish Films Festival, I wonder if that's a place to think about having it, you know, in the future. They have that, you know, it's multiple days and multiple venues, and yeah, it's just kind of interesting to think about.
Actually, Theater J might be the ones who could put it on.
Yes, we did reach out to them. They were in the process of changing hands.
Oh yeah.
So that's something that we will reach out to again in the future. But yeah, I think if it's on its feet, as they say, it could be really more powerful, and also more people could come to see it.
Have you had interest from other synagogues? Have you been showing this around?
We've showed it to a couple. And we've also reached and sent the project to a few producers in LA, just to kind of, you know, let them know that the story still exists and see if there was any interest. So yeah, you know, we got to keep stories like these alive.
Absolutely. Good luck with it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Any final questions for Angeliki, or anything anyone wants to say before we close out for the evening?
Hey, Joni.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, as a defense attorney, it's every defense attorney's dream that you get the guy on the stand and you can get him to confess to the crime that you defend. So I really was gratified by that. It was great cross-examination. So I'll just throw that out.
Really? Has that ever happened to you?
No, unfortunately.
Hysterical. Sue, do you want to close us out since it's your sponsored event?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Sue, who her and I worked on for the last few months, going back and forth with emails and texts and phone notes. Thank you, Sue, for all your help in putting this together. I really hope everyone enjoyed it, and you know, really appreciate your time.
Thanks to you for all the work that you did in putting the program together. That really helped. And I'm glad for all of us who watched it, one source or another. I found it interesting, and I hope all of you did too.
Great.
Great. Well,
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you again. This was
Thank you
wonderful.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you
Enjoy
so
the rest
much.
of your evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.